Good evening, everyone. It being 6:15 on Monday, May 19th, 2025, we will begin the 8th and our final evening of budget hearings for our FY 2026 committee meetings. Please stand for a pledge of allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence for all those who serve in our military, at home and abroad, and for their families. Thank you. Clerk Semino, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Barrica?
Here.
Councilor Moran?
Here.
Councilor Flaherty?
Here.
Councilor Maglio is presently not here. Councilor Reynolds will not be attending this evening.
Thank you very much, Clerk Semino. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of March 25th, 2025?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that is unanimous. We do not have any old business this evening. Again, last announcement on this front, our annual town meeting will be held on Tuesday, May 27th at 7 p.m. That's earlier than our typical council meetings. The meeting will be a public hearing on the budget. Between now and next Tuesday, if you have questions or comments on the budget, I know we've received a few, please send them in to towncouncil@braintreema.gov. Thank you very much, and I want to thank and recognize Director Esmond, who has been with us every evening. We've had budget hearings, and I know we have our town auditor's office here as well tonight, so thank you for being here. All right, with that, do we have a motion to take off the table Order 25018 and 25020 and item 01625?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that is unanimous. We are going to take the agenda a little out of order this evening. Our first item of business will be our callbacks. I want to say thank you very much to our municipal license and inspection team for being back with us this evening. We did submit a series of questions, but Director McGrath, if you'd like to join us, we'd be happy to have you, and thank you for being here. And Mr. Forsberg as well. Pardon me. All right. Thank you again for being here this evening for our callbacks. Councilor Maglio, are you prepared to begin? I know you had sent in questions. If not, I have one to start.
Well, I had sent some questions, and what would be great is to hear some feedback in response to the questions I raised about, let me gather my thoughts here, in terms of the positions, the staffing, and the goals.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I thought maybe, and Councilor, I thought maybe I would address the first question, or first comment on the goals. And I was going to maybe address this a little bit in my discussion of the Finance Department too, since we've, with help certainly and from the Mayor's office, we're one of the lead departments in preparing the fiscal 26 budget. In the sort of speaking generally, with respect to the goal setting process and the narrative that is in the mayor's budget, I think what's represented in the document is, we're proud that we're able to, for the first time, put in goals, metrics, other performance benchmarks that across pretty much all of town government, where it's something that's a critical component of communication with the residents. and identifying to those residents, to the people in our town, what we use our resources for and what we intend to accomplish. I'd be the first one to say there's a lot of places we want to continue to refine it. The questions you have kind of get right to some of the issues that we had in sort of preparing this first year iteration of that, which is we really, this was the first time we really kind of asked departments to articulate across essentially what they've accomplished in 1 year, what they are currently working on, and then what are they intending to accomplish next year. So it's a 3-year look. What you don't see is probably a common voice in the goals and in the narrative. What's also something we need to work on is trying to have a consistent framework. So, Councilor Magley, I know you've brought up the goals and outcomes, how you think that they should be structured, and we welcome and appreciate the feedback. I think the thing I think we wanted to articulate is that we absolutely take that feedback. I know when the mayor presented the budget on the 29th, that was something she had expressed, was she was looking for town council and residents' feedback to the budget, and I think we intend to continue to solicit it and ask for folks' feedback. We don't actually want the goals just to be part of the budget writing process. While it's a critical juncture or a critical point of departure, it's something that in the longer term we look to actually be able to use to benchmark and report on our progress through the year, not just to Ways and Means, but certainly to Ways and Means. But our intention was just that, to get this off the ground and to be able to make progress. We're proud that we were, but we know there's a lot of work to continue to do. And so I think, we just to wrap up, I guess my comments would be, I think we know there's some places that we, in setting the goals, we can do and continue to improve. We can improve, and we will continue to do so, I should say. And we, again, thank you for your feedback, and I think we would look to continue to solicit that and take it back and essentially incorporate the goal setting and benchmarking process into our annual budget development process, where there really wasn't any in what this administration inherited.
So I think that the mayor's office and you and all the departments have done an amazing job coming up with finally putting together that missing piece that we've been craving all this time, which is what are the outcomes of all of this? We just don't want to say we need 30 people doing this full-time and here's what it costs. We need to know what this is, and we need to break that down so that we can then look back and measure and say, was that enough? Was it not enough? Was it done? Was it not done? What are the obstacles? How do we remove them? Do we want to increase that or decrease that? So what you all have given us here is and yourselves, really, and the town, the people of the town, you've given them, all of us, the tools to be able to look at that ourselves and to feel really good about how decisions are being made and how funds are being spent. My question about the goals for these two departments was that it just seemed like there was a bit of a, these just seemed not to be consistent with the other goals when so many of them were all about filling positions, et cetera. So I thought, I understand that you'll need to do some more work and you all will need to figure out, so what are your outcomes and what is it that you are hoping to achieve? And maybe we could just get the high level of that as part of this callback, if there's been any further discussions. And actually, where were these goals developed? Did each department develop their own?
So, yeah, I think that's part of the important point of clarification. Maybe we've touched on it a little bit. We didn't get the amount of time and sort of the normal benchmarking, if we say for best practice, where we would have, goals sort of work their way from, let's say, from starting sort of at the sort of source of the goal, like kind of at the department level, working back all the way up through the executive function and decision-making process, and then back down to, again, make sure that we've got uniformity and that they're consistent and ultimately what the executive would like. Some of those things, require more time for process and I think more familiarity. The guidance we gave the departments was really a lot driven around getting it done and not trying to have a standard voice. And I think if you talk to the Collins Center folks, they emphasize in virtually every call we had with them that the first year is really about getting this up. You've got to get it up. You've got to get a document that you can reproduce. But but the first tranche of it, the first leg, which is why they play such a role in this, is to get it out and get it done. And so a lot of the departments were given discretion with guidance on how to set those goals. There wasn't a lot of correction or further guidance after they were submitted. And so they are mostly uniquely to the department, and I think that's where we are saying there's probably more we can do around uniformity of voice, uniformity of standardization of metric-driven, results-driven, outcome-focused discussion. It's not to say the departments didn't take that approach, and I think that mostly everyone used their interpretation, I think, as they see it, and I think that's fair. But we didn't have enough. We didn't find enough time to really build that extra layer of sort of coming back and getting it sort of in that everything sort of with the uniform kind of approach and making sure that they met the standards that we would like to get to in the ensuing fiscal years.
So that all makes perfect sense, and take whatever kind of steps to perfect it, and I look forward to next year. But we have two very seasoned professionals who have been here since, 96, I think Councilor Moran mentioned. So I'm sure that you've been setting goals anyway. This is just a different way. So maybe you could just verbally discuss, how do you decide for your department what it is you look to accomplish?
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Certainly, I've been coming before this committee for several years and expressing our critical need for staffing measures that need to be taken.
To do what?
Yeah, and so as a goal, that's a really significant goal for us because it definitely impacts the overall operation. And I had mentioned at the last meeting, you had given us some very important input, and we did take that. And that's something that certainly we want to look forward and toward, and working with the mayor's office and Director Esmond in the future. Right now, our staffing is a critical goal for us because that only helps us to get those measurable goals that you'd be looking for as far as numbers and so forth.
Okay, but then let's I kind of disagree with that because I feel like there should be measurable goals for the staffing that you have, but we won't need to. I know that there'll be some more work on that from all of you. So why don't we just take a turn here and in terms of the staffing needs, one of the things that you've talked about some different positions. Maybe that's where we could look at what it is that these positions will do. Because I would think that most every department would say one of our biggest needs are staffing. There's very few who would say, no, we don't need anyone, we don't need anything, here are our goals, here's how we accomplish them, we're all set. So I think that's probably a very common wish list item for most departments. So for the position, let's say the building inspector assistant position, or the second building inspector position that you talked about, increasing the salary, which then I think causes a bump in the salary above that salary. And so we're raising salaries in order to bring the weights and measures in. And we pointed out, we discussed last time that it's been years and the numbers are staying the same. So what's really good for all of us to hear is why something is needed if the numbers aren't changing or there aren't any results associated with that position or that increase or that bump in salary or that extra FTE, et cetera. So maybe that's how we could talk about that. What will be done? How will you measure success once that position is filled? Will things that take 4 weeks take 3 weeks? Will things that take multiple scheduling issues be streamlined in some way? Like, what are those tangible outcomes?
Right. At present, given the critical staffing level we have now, we are reliant upon, in part, casual employee to perform part of the inspection function, which,
What's a casual employee, if you could
I'm
just...
sorry, that would be one that's not, it's an alternate position right now. So, for instance, someone you to bring in that's not, you know, a permanent employee. Right. And again, dealing with it, that you're not essentially allowing for it as timely an inspection or as preference in terms of timetable. So, for instance, right now you'd be offering someone, because of the nature of the casual employee, you're offering nighttime inspections as opposed to daytime inspections, which is preferable in the construction community. So, you know, with this position being filled, now there'd be more available time slots in a more preferable time period in order to conduct these inspections. And to kind of borrow on what Councilor Moran had said at the last meeting, it would also give us flexibility to be able to not be reactive but proactive in the enforcement of town ordinances and bylaws, and secondarily also to be able to do a little bit more of what was previously done in terms of the proactive approach to, or be able to go out into the community and actually try and find things that haven't been able to be found yet because we're simply trying to tread water at this particular time. So
Okay.
we would be able to, you know, again, be a little bit more proactive instead of reactive.
And is there some sort of a cost savings associated with that? Having somebody expanding the staffing versus having somebody come in on a per diem?
Yes, because if you're able to go out into the community and actually find work that might otherwise not be permitted, then you are in fact increasing the revenues of the town for that purpose. And remember now, it's not simply the permit fees that are collected. The bigger picture is the fact that when a permit is obtained and work is inspected and approved and signed off on, the assessing department also now, on a more permanent basis, is able to reevaluate properties and to tax them at different rates. So so while the immediate results are permit fees being generated for the town in terms of revenue, the bigger picture is how much is being missed because of the fact that we're not catching some of these, that's work ongoing, and not reevaluating those properties in terms of their assessed value. So there is tangible. Secondarily to that also is the fact that the department acts in terms of the collection of taxes when a permit is applied for. If there are back taxes owed, okay, we cannot issue a permit until such time as they are satisfied, and that is a very good motivation for folks to settle other municipal outstanding fees.
So those are outcomes in terms of how the town department can collect more revenue from residents. How does that benefit residents? What is the flip side of that? And not from a revenue standpoint, but from a pipeline standpoint.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
From a pipeline standpoint, so that are there projects that are being held up? Are there contractors that are being sidelined? Are there people taking days off from work to wait for an inspection that's not happening? Like, what is the benefit other than the concrete math involved in people paying for fees and fines and back taxes?
Right.
Because one of the things that we talked about last time was that you incorporated the hiring into these numbers, but they're not any different than in past years.
Well, we can't project what, in fact, might occur as a result of the additional person in terms of pure numbers. And initially, it would be, I think it would not be, it would be disingenuous for us to suggest that. However, in terms of what you've just requested there, you would see a better delivery of service in a more timely fashion than what you have right now, only for the fact that you are at minimal staffing level.
So that's really important. So what is the waiting time now?
Well, I suppose it would depend upon a particular project. Oftentimes, people might be waiting, a few days at least, if not more, to get an inspection just because the timetables that are available are not conducive to their schedule, so things have to be put off.
So a couple of days.
If I can jump on that as well. There have been times, we would love to be able to offer same-day service. That's not always possible. More often than not, it's not. But there have been occasions when Mr. Forsberg's schedule is booked out a week, and we're having to schedule inspections out that far, which is not a desirable outcome that we want, and we're certain that it's not a desirable outcome for the recipient of that inspection. We'd prefer to get it done sooner. So certainly with the assistance of additional staff, that would help alleviate that.
So
And-
that's important too, because I think that, I would anticipate that schedules are booked out far in advance because people have to schedule this, plan for this, have all their different trades show up, do all that stuff. But that would be the compelling reason that we would need to expand the staffing. And that's the part that you're saying can't really be assessed, but that you're saying it can happen. So that is the exact information that I think we need to see as justification for increasing and documentation of the need to increase whatever the position is how does this benefit residents? What are they going to be doing? That will certainly possibly pay for itself, possibly ease some of the budget issues, but even more important would be to actually speed up that kind of commerce, that kind of business for businesses and residents of the town. So maybe I have a couple of others, but does anyone else want to jump in?
I might just offer, listening to the conversation, and thank you. I think where I'm seeing the conundrum here is we're dealing with almost like a counterfactual, right? We have not had this staffing in place for so long, since definitely the last probably 6 years that I've been on the council. And so trying to prove what we could be doing with what we had, if we had it, it's a little bit of magic, but I think that what we're trying to relay here is we have a fiduciary responsibility to the residents and the taxpayers of the town to make sure that we have a handle on what our hard-earned money is going towards, and I think that's where we're getting a little hung up on this. But also understanding that I want to acknowledge, sometimes when you put information out into the world, it opens up more questions than you anticipated, and I think this might be one of those times. So I again, greatly appreciate all of the work that's been done with putting goals down. We've never had this before, and I think what we're asking for as we look forward is some standardization and rigor behind what is going on the paper so that we can then explain why all of this is so important to our residents and what it means to have the one more inspector, the one more nurse, the one more librarian, whatever it might be, because there's a tangible result at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I could add just something else. At the last meeting, Councilor Moran provided some historical background, having been with, not to mention how long you've been with the town government, Peter, but in 1996, when he was a selectman at the time, he did mention at the time there was a full-time inspector of buildings, 2 full-time local inspectors, a full-time code compliance officer, and a full-time weights and measures inspector. And over the course of time from then until now, we clearly don't have that staff. I would love to see that sort of staffing level again, but there's certainly no expectation that we'll get back to that point. But right now, I currently have a full-time building inspector that's covering a lot of those duties. And again, it's just putting out, we're reactive, and we'd like to get back to the position where we're being as proactive as we can.
That's definitely important context. I would also offer, though, that there's probably been a shift in the fact that back then there wasn't online permitting, there weren't that many computers that everybody had in their homes, there weren't these kinds of software programs that we have now where people can just log on and do what they're going to do. So, I mean, a lot of things have changed for sure since '96. Let's talk about the weights and measures piece, because I did see that there was something, I sent along the information about outsourcing that. Have you compared the costs?
So we have inquiries made about this. I mean, we've been doing it throughout the years, but really haven't gotten a great response back from the state because they have limited numbers of inspectors as well. But I do understand that the Norfolk County Weights and Measures has a potential ability to be able to do that. And the inquiry that we received was there's a potential of up to $32,000 to provide, in order for them to provide that service, it could cost the town upwards of $32,000. And so, just as an example, in FY25, up to date, the expenditures with the inspector that we're using for those inspections was $2,805. The revenue that's been received from July 1st to present, or through March, I should say, as per the town accountant's figures, was $7,325. And that was 2025. In 2000,
So, I'm sorry, can you repeat that number again?
the
revenue,
revenues from July 1st to March through our town accountant's office was $7,325 in weights and measures. In FY24, the revenue was $7,595. Certainly, you know.
And the cost?
I'm sorry?
And the cost in FY24?
I don't have that figure right in front of me. Hang on a minute.
Would you say it was probably similar
I'd say it
to?
was probably within a day, like within maybe a few $100s if even.
So, okay, and what is so about $2,800 is what we've spent on this function in order to bring in $7,300.
Correct.
It would seem to me like that's not a lot in either category. That's not a lot of funds being put out there. That's not a lot of funds being brought in. So why is that part of the building inspector? Why are you going to change the building inspector position to include that function, since that's not really a function that typically goes with building inspector?
Well, it actually, in the town of Braintree, it has. So in FY14, the sealer of weights and measures position, which was a full-time position, was absorbed in that individual was retiring, and the position was absorbed into local building inspector's job description. So it did become a function of the local building inspector, and it has been since that time.
Except that you mentioned that was the reason you couldn't fill the building inspector position, so you're going to increase the salary in order to bring in a weights and
No, it wasn't
measure.
the weights and measures component. The concern that we've had, and for some time, as Mr. Forsberg explained last time, is that we're in a situation where we have many communities that have aging resources in their building divisions. They're retiring, or some have just left positions. And all of us are competing for the same very small pool of certified building officials. And in order to try and resolve that issue, towns and cities are seeing increases in their salary levels to try and competitively get those resources or those individuals in.
So it's
to the
not
positions.
changing the position, it's just increasing the salary.
Correct. Like the
And
weights
what
and
is the
measures.
salary being increased from and to?
So the salary at present would be $84,452.52, and the requested reclassification would bring it to $94,011.84.
Okay. And you're saying that those salaries are within the competitive zone in order to fill that building inspector position?
Yeah, and
So it's
one-
not the weights and measures?
No, it's not the weights and measures. That was always part of the position.
So then we would be Well, except that, how long have we been outsourced? We've had somebody part-time doing it for how long?
Our
Since
alternate-
FY14?
Probably since 2000, 2021,
Yeah,
2021. Then when the building,
So who did it from FY14 to 21? I'm just not following.
we had a full-time local building inspector that was also a sealer of weights and measures. He was certified sealer of weights and measures.
And then he's the one that left in 21.
I don't know his exact date that he left, but then another building inspector came on, and we were able to, that inspector assumed those duties. That inspector has since left. He left in '21 to take a position with the state because it was upwards of a $30,000 increase in his salary.
All right, well, this is information that I think is important and part of how we need to make smart decisions and how we invest in the services we have. And so I appreciate you coming back and talking more about this and being able to kind of shine some lights on all of this for us. I'm going to think about it, and I'm just going to say thank you and turn it over to whomever else.
Thank you, Counselor Maglio. Any other counselors have questions for municipal licenses and inspections? Okay. I have one follow-up. I know we had requested the ADA transition plan spreadsheet. Is that coming before, it doesn't need to be tonight, but when will the committee
So
see that?
I know that Ms. Nyman had sent an email along indicating that we're still updating it. Our ADA coordinator is coordinating with certain divisions within the DPW department to make sure that she has the current information. If not, getting that information into the system has been what has been addressed, and then getting that online. So we're trying to get that completed as quickly as we can.
If this committee could get the current working copy before I think that was the request from Ms., I know it's working to get actually published on the website, but if we can get a copy now, this week, that would be super helpful.
I'll coordinate with Ms. Nyman on that.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else for municipal licenses and inspections?
Something that will be ongoing, the other comments in the email, the goals, all of that, that's just something that'll be shifted to the work of leadership, staff development, that kind of stuff. Okay.
I think that's right with respect to the goals. I do think we were ready to talk about the questions about Braintree Day, though.
I didn't know if that fell under municipal. I thought that might be under your department, Director Esmond.
I guess there's actually one small piece that's related.
Okay. In that case, thank you.
And maybe that's just it, and then we could just
The revenue?
just the revenue piece.
There he is, okay. So I do have some information for the involvement that my department would have with the Braintree Day celebration is we would inspect and permit the food vendors that set up over at the high school. And so in 2024, there were 22 food vendors that set up at the event at the high school. Of the 22 food vendors, 5 were temporary one-day food permits with a revenue of $250. It was $50 per permit. 17 of the food vendors were mobile food units that had annual permits to operate. And for those particular annual permits, it was a revenue of $2,350. As far as expenditures for the department, myself and 2 health inspectors were on site to conduct inspections with the food vendors, and the 2 health inspectors received compensatory time for that. There was a question about permit fees for nonprofit organizations. So just generally, anyone that is applying for a temporary food permit that is of a nonprofit organization, we waive the permit fee. And then the department itself does not have a separate line item for Braintree Day.
Okay. Thank you. Very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. So
Yes,
I can handle maybe this first part of the question, and I think I saw Ben's in the back, but
Director Esmond, do you mind if we hold that for
Sure.
your
My piece?
department? And
Absolutely.
because I would like to call law next, if that's
sounds
acceptable.
perfect.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Solicitor Rossetti, and welcome. And
Thank
we
you.
know you just started.
Thank you, Chair Barrica and members
So-
of the committee. I'm glad to be here.
I don't know if you have anything you'd want to open with, or Director Esmond, if you do, on behalf of the Law Department. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to try to reference the page for all of us here. And
I probably would just note for the council members, committee members, sorry, that Town Solicitor Rossetti was not, when he came on, he really wasn't able to, we didn't have the time, or it was probably at the time where he wasn't really able to engage it into, provide the input that maybe we would have had if it was even just a few weeks before that. So the budget that's before you, I think, I don't want to speak for Ken, but I think, I think it represents really the work that we had carried sort of as a pro forma budget. We did obviously account for the fact that we were hiring, bringing in-house the town solicitor role, but the estimate for legal services and other items within this department, I think are going to take, further work as we work through with Ken coming on, and he can tell you sort of his observations, but I'm sure they will evolve as he moves past his first month. So I felt like that was, from a colleague perspective, I felt like that might be important to, sort of start this, and then I'll certainly defer to Ken on his observations, but, that's the reality of this budget.
Thank you.
I can tell the committee tonight, I've hit the ground running. My matter list continues to grow frequently with time-sensitive matters that I'm working on, which is great. I welcome that. In terms of goals, always provide excellent responsive service to the internal stakeholders here in the government of the town of Braintree, and also help achieve positive results for the town, whether it's through court cases, whether it's through favorable resolutions of problems, whatever that may be, helping to solve the problems, the legal problems of the town. Bringing in an in-house attorney offers the town an opportunity to reduce its reliance upon outside counsel. So, and I think there's a recognition of that in the budget that's been presented for FY26. With that said, if the number of attorneys brought in-house remains at 1, there will be some progress in that effort, but it's not going to eliminate the town's reliance upon outside counsel. I already have a busy plate, and that's great, but there will be times when, because of my role here as internal legal counsel, there'll be instances where it'll be necessary to refer matters out, whether due to a conflict, and that has happened to me in my legal career, where a matter has had to go to outside counsel because of a conflict, or simply because there's an expert in a particular field outside the town who would be able to provide quick and efficient service to Braintree should that need arise. So my plan is to stay vigilant in terms of my own workload and to get with the mayor, get with CFO Esmond, get with the council, if necessary, to talk about perhaps the prospect of expanding the department if it makes sense monetarily. If the numbers suggest that bringing in a second person may take an even bigger chunk out of outside referrals, that would be something for internal stakeholders here to consider. And I don't want to speak for the financial component here, but I think there would be, I was conferring with the CFO earlier today, and perhaps if it means quarterly reporting to the committee on sort of the progress through FY26, that would be something to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Thank you so much, Solicitor Rossetti. I'll open it up to the committee for questions, if any. I'll start us off then, because I have one question, if that's all right with folks. And this may be, so first of all, thank you for being here tonight, very early in your tenure. I'm delighted to have you join the town, and I know that it was of grave concern to this committee last year when we had an outside firm for multiple reasons rather than our own in-house solicitor. So glad you're on board.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and Director Esmond, to that end, I think this question would be for you. Is there money budgeted in this? I'm looking at the line items here for outside counsel.
Yes.
Where
so
is that?
On page 4 of the general fund line item report, we're carrying 125,000.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
For fiscal '26, which is I think, as we're discussing, is a market reduction from what the projected is for fiscal '25. I'm guardedly optimistic that that 375 is on the high end. We've got a month and a half to go. We've got billing for really through the first 3 quarters. But I just, was able to send my matters tracker to him to sort of, I think a lot of it is trying to look at, with his, starting to, kind of his vision of what is actually still ongoing or not. I'm certainly not the right person, but that's where it's funded. I
Okay.
reference a pro forma assumption, and it's more that to bring us in line with where the department's funding has historically been, but it's going to take time to really know what this should be.
So is that 125,000, is that based on like what we expect to have to outsource, or we're just mirroring it off of past trends?
Mirroring
or is it based
after
on actuals?
more, it's more mirroring off of past historical funding levels for the department. I couldn't say that, the matters have been reviewed with an estimate of this much for these matters that cannot be brought in house and taken on, or these are expiring, and, some assumption of new matters coming on that will be to town council, which I think would be the longer term goal, that we'd like to get for, let's say, for example, through fiscal '27. But I think we would be looking to provide the committee with updates on that progress as we go through the course of fiscal '26.
Okay, thank you. Seems a little low to me, but I hope you're right. So I'll leave it at that. Any other questions? Councilor Moran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I recognize that this is a work in progress, and I think it's a responsible budget, given that, we have a new department head that this department, more than others, will, is going to be dependent on the skill set and the comfort level of the department head in dealing with what he wants to keep on his plate and what he feels it's in the best interest of the town for him to outsource. Every town solicitor brings a skill set or an area of strength that they can devote their, to the business of the town, and also should acknowledge where they're not strong. So I'm interested in hearing from you, Mr. Rossetti, where you're going to focus your efforts on. I know that you've been clearing up a number of things that were sent to the solicitor's office for answers or clarification, and I appreciate that work, but I'm also interested in hearing where do you think your work will focus?
Counselor, I see my work focusing on labor and employment matters, questions about best practices in that regard, questions that arise about interpreting the charter, interpreting our ordinances. I have a wide variety of experience in many areas, but again, if I had to name a wheelhouse, the wheelhouse would be labor and employment work. Okay. I have had both here with the town of Braintree and in my prior experience, very positive work experiences with the KP Law firm on land use planning matters. So I definitely foresee, working in conjunction with the mayor, continuing that relationship on land use planning matters. So, that would be an area where I would see my contributions directly to the town, as well as relying upon, in part, the efforts of that firm as well. My experience in land use planning has been more along the lines of defending a municipality's decision with regard to zoning matters, defending the 40A Section 17 actions where an applicant is challenging a decision by the town. So if it's litigation-oriented in the land use arena, I do have experience with that and feel comfortable moving forward with that. Some of the more arcane areas of land use planning, I would tend to look for an expert, someone who has handled those types of cases frequently in the past, because again, I think the town benefits from the greater efficiency of having that expert come in and assist the town on that matter.
Yeah, thank you. I will end there. I think that is well suited, I think, for focusing on labor and then governance issues is going to be a benefit to the town, because labor and human resources issues are very interpersonal. They're very relationship-oriented and culture-oriented, as are the governance issues and the charter interpretation that you discussed. And keeping those in-house, I think, will, it provides an opportunity for better, to resolve problems before they actually arise, and I think it's far more economical. So that was all good to hear. Thank you. Thank you, Madam
Thank you,
President.
Counselor. Counselor Flaherty?
Thank you. So I understand that the $125,000 is meant to mirror past trends, which makes sense on the budget line. That's how we estimate lots and lots of things. So the unfortunate thing about legal concerns is that they almost always appear as, bad surprises. So I'm wondering, I know that Solicitor Rossetti is very new, and I want to, again, extend a welcome to you, because I just think you're off to a great start.
Thank you,
It's not
Counselor.
easy to start a new job and get all those details right on the first go. So you're off to a very good start. But as you have sort of familiarized yourself with the actual facts of our known legal affairs, as opposed to whatever bad surprises are out there for the future problems of Braintree, Director Esmond, did you have an opportunity to consult with Solicitor Rossetti on whether he thought that $125,000 was a reasonable estimate for what, considering the lay of the land that he's ascertained in the office so far?
Counselor, not really. I think Ken and I probably had I want to say maybe a 15-minute, it was a very brief conversation before we filed on the budget. So we really didn't, have a chance to kind of confer on this. And that, I think, we wanted to acknowledge it. I want to acknowledge it, that, we know that it's more based on sort of a general assumption of what the budget has been when staff of the town solicitor and the outside counsel use. But there's going to have to be some, work and sort of assess where we are with the existing matters that are currently being worked on by outside counsel, and what, as I said, once Ken's had a chance to kind of weigh in on what we actually need. And I guess I would say, again, I don't want to speak for you, Ken, but I think it may take, maybe months or quarters to get through that, to understand it, because some of these matters are hopefully expiring, and some are, to your point, still in the phasing of being unpleasant surprises.
Okay, well, it does seem a little low to me, but I can be optimistic. If everybody is on their best behavior, maybe we'll squeak by.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Maglio, did you have any questions, or all set?
Just
Okay.
would like to say that we want a town solicitor who's bored most of the time, because things are just smooth sailing.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions for Solicitor Rossetti. Thank you for joining us this evening, and I look forward to working with you. Go ahead, Counselor. Go right ahead.
I did, actually. I was being glib there. And you mentioned your labor and employment specialty. So are you part of the negotiations that will be happening with the various union contracts that are coming up?
Yes, Counselor.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you very much, Solicitor Rossetti.
Thank you, Chair.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Counselors. You as well.
All right. Next on our agenda this evening, we are going to take a tack, and we're going to move on to, we do have an appointment for the Braintree Weymouth Regional Recreation Conservation District Board of Directors. Kathleen Bowes has been nominated by the mayor. I do want to make a note for the committee members here and anyone watching at home that the way that the appointments work is the council has a 30-day window to approve appointments. If that 30-day window expires without that formal approval, the appointment goes through. So again, to be transparent, the appointment came to the council's office on April 23rd, 2025. I think it was actually date stamped April 24th, so it may have been after hours. So this appointment will not have a formal hearing at the council, but we thought it was important for it to come before this body and at least let Mrs. Bowes introduce herself, and I will extend a thank you so much for your service to the community. So I don't know if you want to say a few words.
Sure thing. So it's been a privilege to serve as a commissioner at Pond Meadow for the past 3.5 years, really. My dad, John Kevaney, he served as a commissioner for over 10 years, and after his passing in 2020, I felt that I'd like to carry on kind of his work there. And then I grew up being a campfire girl, and my brothers in Boy Scouts. It was just, Pond Meadow was always a big part of our family life. And my own children, you know, we went there riding bikes, walking, and then the Summer Nature Program is a fabulous 8-week program that we offer, and my kids all did that every summer. And my daughter has actually been a counselor, supervisor there since she was 16, so a long time. So in my past 3.5 years, I've learned so much. It's really just such a beautiful gem in our town. You know, it's full of amazing nature, and it's just a great place for people to go and relax, take some fresh air, and kind of de-stress. We're doing really a lot of great projects there. I thank you, Councilor Flaherty, for all your work with our invasive weeds that we have, and our rangers. Keith and Nikiak really work alongside with you and doing a tremendous job taking care of getting rid of all of the invasive species there. As you know, it's a huge, we work with the Army Corps of Engineers, making sure that the flood control is, you know, in check, keeping Weymouth Landing safe. We've done a lot of work with the fish ladder and the smelt and bringing in new species of fish, so it's exciting too. And we've hired a forester, Joe Kowalski, who has done a great job just kind of looking at the whole 320 acres and seeing what's good, what needs to be fixed, and coming up with a forestry plan. And so now that we have that, we're looking for grant money to help with a lot of different things. We have a huge deer population that's eating like 80 pounds of vegetation a day. So we're looking at fencing in with like 12-foot fencing to keep the deer out, to bring back some of these trees that are just being kind of demolished by the deer. And then we have an exciting new pollinator program. We've taken the big meadow and taken out all of the, again, invasive species. And the Friends of Pond Meadow have purchased a new harrow to help us kind of make sure that that space is ready for the seed. We have just the two rangers have worked so hard to create, to sow like 350 pounds of seeds. This is going to just create just a beautiful pollinator section of the meadow that we hope, you know, will bring in more people. As a teacher in town, I can see having field trips there and teaching them about, you know, plant animal adaptations. And so it's just been, it's been a really great 3.5 years, and I look forward to the projects in the future with your approval. And I just thank you for approving our budget every year. We are trying to bring on a third ranger because our rangers they work so tirelessly, and they don't work, some days, there's a lot of paperwork with the whole commission, so that will be a great help too. So thank you for your support with the budget.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Bose. That was really interesting. I learned a lot, so just listening, so thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the counselors? Counselor Flaherty.
Thank you so much. So I'm so pleased to hear that there's a new ranger coming on to Pond Meadow Park, because I feel like Pond Meadow, I mean, I would call it an undiscovered gym, but I think it's very much discovered. Like, I was there today, and there were kids running and people walking their dogs and just, sitting on benches enjoying the spring weather. And it's a lovely place, but it's a place that needs some love and attention. And what I've seen, I've had more interactions with Ranger Keefe than the other, but he has made remarkable strides with just the one harrow. Like, huge. He's taken out entire trees after trees after trees that don't belong there, because what he's trying to do is restore the meadow for pollinator habitat. It's so critical. I mean, it is Pond Meadow Park.
Right.
And, he's been able to attack other invasive species a little bit at a time, but, he has to manage the dam for flood control and see to every other need in the park. And it's just a lot for one person. So I think a little bit more resources for that park is a huge advantage. And I know that getting that forest plan has been, a big foundation, set a strong foundation for making smart changes.
Sure.
But those changes are going to take additional resources. And I'll just put a little note in. Braintree needs to do its part to get the second bridge fixed.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
They can't even drive the truck over there, so
No.
if there was an emergency situation, it would be really in trouble. So that is something that is utmost important to, I know money is tight, but it's a safety issue, truly.
Yeah. And, the last thing I'll say is that putting that love into the park, it pays off. On Braintree Beautification Day, Sustainable Braintree made an appearance at the park, and we took out some garlic mustard, which is an invasive weed. And as I went in there, I was just pulling out garlic mustard. It's not very hard to pull out. It's pretty satisfying work to do if you're like me. But what I found was that if you could remove the garlic mustard underneath there, there's a Jack in the Pulpit. Look at that. It's there. It's a little anemic because it's been in the shade, but now we've moved the garlic mustard and it will get more sunshine and that will make it perk up some. And look, here's a fiddlehead fern. Like, this stuff is there. And if you walk Pond Meadow often enough, you'll find wildlife, not just deer, because there should be about 5 deer in that park, but Brian Keefe estimates that there are 75.
Yes.
It's stunning.
Yes.
So that is, but if you just make yourself a regular, you'll find snakes, which are not everybody's favorite, but I think they're cool. And you'll find hawks and
Turtles, frogs, it's part of the
turtles.
Summer Nature
And
program.
I know the smelt don't look like much.
Yeah,
They don't look like much, but they're really important.
they sure are, yes, yes, yes.
Anyway, I'm so grateful for all of the work that you've poured into that park.
Thank you.
I think it is a really important component of our community, and it is very deserving of the attention you're giving it. So thank you for that.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors? Counselor Moran?
Thank you, Ms. Bose. Thank you for waiting so long.
No worries.
And I enjoyed hearing your discussion. I know the Kevanee, your folks put a lot of time into a number of different things in the town. So thank you for your continuing their tradition of giving back to Braintree. And I'm happy to support your
Thank you, Peter.
appointment.
Counselor Maglio.
Yes, it was so interesting listening to the kinds of things that you've talked about, and thank you for everything that you've done. I do want to just mention a little plug for the deer, that there is deer and general wildlife birth control, which could be much cheaper than having to do the fencing. There's, I've done a lot of research on it because we've got a rat problem in East Braintree.
Yes.
And there's rat birth control,
Yes.
and there's also deer birth control. And
Okay.
there are cities and towns everywhere that use it, and it's pretty cost efficient. So
Okay.
something to
Absolutely.
Google.
Absolutely. Thank you for that
All right?
suggestion.
And
Yes.
and I also intend to support and thank you
Thank
for all
you.
that you do.
Thank you.
You just never know what you're going to learn at a Ways and Means Committee meeting. Think it's boring, but no,
Little
deer birth
tidbits.
control. Thank you so
All
much.
right, thank you so much.
I have actually two quick questions for you,
Sure.
Ms. Bose. First is, how often does the Conservation District Board of Directors meet, and how?
We meet
Where?
every third Wednesday of the month.
Okay, and is it virtual? Is it in
No,
person?
we meet in the Nature Center, the Ranger Center.
At the-
Yep,
and-
at Palmetto, yes.
So
Yep.
every third Wednesday of the month?
Yes.
And what time?
7 o'clock.
Okay, so if anybody wants to get more involved in Palmetto Park, every third Wednesday of the month at 7 o'clock at the park, open to the public. And you said you hired, the board of directors has hired a forester?
Yes.
And is that a full-time position, or?
Joe is Kowalski. He's just an amazing man. He comes to the park. I'm not quite sure how often he comes, but when he comes, he meets with Brian. We've also installed a counter, so we know how many people actually use the park
Oh, that's
every
great.
day, hoping again for more funding, for grant funding. So he usually comes every meeting and just will give a report as to, he's really working on grant funding right now.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, I will certainly be of support of this, and I do want to say thank you also to Councilor Flaherty for being a constant
Yes.
champion of Palmetto Park
Absolutely.
and keeping us all posted. And thank you so much for
You're
your
welcome.
service to the community in so many ways.
Thank you. And friend, you could always become a friend of Pond Meadow. That's another part of our group. We used to do a lot of fundraising, but because of insurance issues and insurance riders, we would have a pumpkin fest, and
Oh,
we'd have a
yeah.
Mother's Day plant sale and a resale, but we've had to really pull that back because of, it's not cost effective to get an insurance rider and then really not make any money. So, but anyway, the Friends of Pond Meadow are another part you could, participate with as well. Anybody can be a friend of Pond Meadow.
Thank you. That's
welcome.
great.
Yes.
Great information, and
right.
I will certainly share that and pass that
All
on.
right.
So,
All right.
do we have a motion?
This is a long one to read, I gotta find it now. Okay. Yep, I'm getting there. Madam Chair, I would move for favorable recommendation to the full council upon the request of Her Honor Mayor Joyce, the Town of Braintree, through the Braintree Town Council, in accordance with Sections 210 and 3.3 of the Town Charter, approve the appointment of Kathleen Bowes to the Weymouth Braintree Recreation Conservation District Board of Directors.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That is unanimous.
thanks so much for your
Congratulations,
time.
and thank you so much, and thank you for sticking with us this evening. Okay, going back onto the budget path, we're going to go back to our golf program. I believe we have Mr. Brown here, and we also have DPW Director Jacques, under which the golf department falls. Good evening, Mr. Brown.
Good evening, good
Thank
evening.
you so much for joining us tonight. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to lead off with.
Sure. Let me just give you kind of an update where we're at. So this year is our 70th anniversary of the town
Wow.
purchasing and operating the golf course.
70th?
70 years, the town purchased the
Wow.
golf course in 1955 at town meeting, and has been
Awesome.
owning and operating it since then, and we're having kind of a recognition for it for this season throughout at the golf course. And
Excellent.
we're excited about it. It's probably not as, it kind of actually caught us all by surprise until we kind of started looking at the history. But it's been, the golf business has been very, very robust the last few years post-COVID. We're seeing the golf boom that is kind of nationwide has certainly come to our golf course, and we're certainly taking advantage of it to the best of our ability. And it's a really good, diversified golf boom with certainly a younger generation coming in, and also women have been a huge influx at the golf course. Our women's leagues, our women's clinics have all been sold out. This year, today, we hosted the Bay State Girls Golf Championship, which was a big event for us. And last year, we had the state championship for girls, which was a really big event for us. So it's all been a very positive story for us, at least for the last 5 years. So we're really happy with the direction that we're going with. We've got some capital improvements, hopefully, coming up for FY26 we've got in the budget. We've been able to accomplish quite a few of them this year in-house, and we've gotten a lot done. Our golfers seem to notice that, and we're really happy with some of the improvements we've done so far and some of the ones we have coming up. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard about the herring that has been going on, and the golf course. We've actually been working with Brad Chase from Fish and Wildlife. Back in 2016, we were helping Brad put in flow sensors in all of our streams, trying to judge flow at certain times of the year. And Brad has worked with us in helping to identify some areas of the rivers and streams that we can clear out, and that he has come out and helped us with that over the years. So I was kind of caught by surprise by the number of herring that we had going through the golf course, which has been noticed by all of our golfers. And I think Mayor Joyce has some thoughts on how we might celebrate that a little bit more next spring, considering how many that we have that have been traveling up the streams. And it seems like we're going to have quite a big population in all of our ponds and streams at the golf course, as well as the ones heading up towards Great Pond. So we certainly saw a lot of activity, and it's really been exciting to see. We certainly have the space and the water for them to handle. We've been fortunate. We just received a grant from the Mass Golf Association and the USGA to upgrade our moisture sensing technology in the golf course. We're hoping to get that implemented sometime the end of June. It's a $3,000 piece of equipment that we usually have a college or a high school kid go around on a daily basis and measure the moisture content of the golf course, and we're able to reduce our watering and water conservation, which is the focal point of golf now. And we're excited to get that technology up and going, hopefully by the end of June. We've been using an older model for the last few years, but we're excited that we've been awarded that grant, and hopefully it can help us with our management going forward. So we're excited for that. The other big growth for us has been the large outings and tournaments. We call them shotgun tournaments, where all the golfers tee off at once, about 140 to 180 people. At one point in time, we were traditionally between 12 and 15 tournaments. This year, we're up to 24 tournaments, so we've almost doubled in the last few years. Excuse me. That's all great for us. It's guaranteed revenue for Pro Shop and merchandise, and certainly keeps us busy, especially if the weather's inclement. So it really has us scrambling once we get going. In the month of June is when they really kick in, all the way into the end of October. So it's really been great for us. Junior clinics have been sold out, and we're really getting into full swing right now. The Saturday weather hasn't been so great, but revenue has been steady, and we really can't complain about that. We're just hoping to get in Memorial Day weekend. But other than that, I have a synopsis. We have very few budgetary changes, and I can address those one by one if you'd like me to, or we can go line by line, however the council would like to proceed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brown. Really appreciate that overview. If you're amenable, I think I'll open it up to the committee for questions, and then if there's questions on those line items, we can certainly answer as we go. So do any counselors have questions for the golf director?
I actually
Counselor Maglio?
don't. I feel like we got a good overview from you recently. I don't remember why you were before Ways and Means. It was
A supplemental.
supplemental budget, right? Okay, and it's very impressive, and I just want to thank you. I don't have any questions.
Thank you. I do have plans to come back with our Audubon Cooperative Sanctuary Program and do a presentation for council. I figured we would get through the budget season and come back when a meeting is a little bit less populated with agenda items, and we can set something up probably in June or whatever best suits the council, and I can reach out and make arrangements for that.
That was one of my questions, so thank you. We'll look forward to that.
Yep.
Anybody else? Counselor Flaherty?
I don't have a question, but every year I'm confronted by questions from residents who are wondering, like, how can we be spending all this money on golf when we know our resources are so constrained in every department? And so for the sake of understanding that point, I will just say that golf is an enterprise fund, and the people who support that are the golfers themselves with the fees that they spend to play the game that they love. And so it's this wonderful resource that we have in Braintree that's not connected to our general fund usually. So that is, I just wanted to make that clarification for anybody
Sure.
who's watching and wondering how we can afford golf when we have to make choices between science and business in our schools.
No, I appreciate that. We have 160 acres, and we do our best to be good stewards of that property for the town, and I think we do so. But thank you.
That is all.
Thank you, Counselor Flaherty. Good point. Counselor Moran?
Thank you. I'll be brief. I'm glad that Councilor Flaherty pointed out that this is self-sustaining, that you live off what you take in. And I know how much time you spend on greens fees and the different categories of greens fees. And I've had those discussions, and I don't miss them, Darren. But you really try to make it affordable and fair and cover your costs. And I really want to commend you and Dylan Casserly and everyone else over there that have really worked hard to make sure that when the town had to assist the golf course when there were issues, you've come out from under that very well, very quickly, and I appreciate the efforts that you took to do that, and now you're you're back up on your feet again and on your, living off your own revenues. It's really transformed in the last 5 years from a somewhat dormant resource to a year-round, very active one that not only is active during golf season, but there's indoor monitors that can be used in the clubhouse and off-season. And I love Pond Meadow as much as any place else in town, but if you want to take a walk in the winter when it's not too rainy, there's no better place than the golf course. When it's funny that you're doing monitoring for moisture in the ground there, because that is the wettest place in town. My golf ball finds water no matter where I hit it. So you don't need to have a machine. I can just hit the ball and find water for it.
I appreciate that.
But it's, and you're innovative. You've been using the goats for groundskeeping and things like that. And, just the way that it's become a year-round resource. I really give you a lot of credit, Darren, and thank you for your hard work.
Appreciate it, Council. Thank you very much. We're also doing a lot more combined events with recreation and community events up at the golf course this year. We've put a lot of money into the clubhouse. We're really proud of it, and we hope people will come up and participate. We're going to start advertising a few more throughout the season.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. I do have a couple questions, and thank you for indulging me. If you did cover these, was not able to come to that one meeting which had the supplemental, so forgive me if this is repeat. But I am curious, maybe 2 years ago, we implemented a young adult membership where the fee structure was more palatable for, recent college grads. And I'm just curious, can you provide an update on how that's going? Is it subscribed? Is it underutilized?
I don't have the exact number of how many we have. I think last year we had 3 or 4. I'm assuming that's probably about the same. It really is more applicable to we only offer it to Braintree residents. So I think the number was 4, but I can get back to you on that.
Yeah, if you could, that idea came from one of my constituents, a
Sure.
local resident. I would love
Sure.
to provide an update, and also, is there something that we need to do differently to make sure that young adults know we offer this? It's not so, with all the expenses newly minted adults have, this is a nice little offset. So if you don't mind sending that as a follow-up, Mr. Brown, that would be greatly appreciated.
Will do.
My next question, and I know that Director Jacques has already heard this, and as has Director Esmond, but thinking about our environmental goals and going back, I don't know how many years ago we approved the lease on the golf carts. At that time, we talked about transitioning, having that as our swing. I think it was a 5-year lease, having that as a swing time before we could electrify the golf carts. So my question is, how far along are we on that 5-year lease, and how far are we in advancing electrifying the golf carts?
The golf cart lease expires in 2027, and in this year's capital budget, we have funding to bring in a consultant to help us redesign a building. It's going to be financially a real strain on us for the construction required for that.
Yeah.
We might have to bring in more golf carts. It's going to require some significant electrical engineering, because you have to have a 20-amp charger for 72 golf carts. So we're going to have to figure out how and when and where we can get that funding when that comes through. It's certainly going to require a lot of infrastructure, and that has me greatly concerned, because construction costs in municipalities right now are through the roof with prevailing wage and lack of bidders. We've made great strides on the maintenance end. All of our new mowers for fairways and greens have all been hybrid electric. We have converted all of our 2-stroke pieces of equipment, from weed whackers to lawn mowers to blowers, all to 100% electric. So we've made some good strides there. But I think for me to give a cost estimate right now, I have no idea. So we're going to have to bring in someone with some electrical engineering and some construction experience. I'm also going to reach out to our vendor to find out who might design this type of building for us. But it's something that we will get a number on and come back to the council and discuss. But it's going to be a substantial investment that we'll have to have a discussion about.
Yeah, I'm pleased to hear that it hasn't fallen by the wayside. I would offer up working with either Department of Energy Resources at the state, BELD, and we just talked the other night about the Green Communities Act and making sure that we're maximizing those grants. And I'm hopeful, nothing about transitioning off of fossil fuels is quick or inexpensive, but it's especially for the neighborhood, right? It's one way that we can provide cleaner air, and it's something we can control, because it's our property. We can't control who buys an electric vehicle. We can't control other things, but this is something that is embedded in a community, in a neighborhood, that we have control over. So I appreciate that you're continuing to pursue this, and if there's any support that certainly I can provide as an individual counselor, or this committee can provide to help access those grants, please reach out.
Yeah, we will reach out and get somebody this summer. when the golf is up and going, and start to get some numbers put together. It might be something we have to seek some grants for over the winter, and come back and make a presentation on that. But in all other aspects of what we're doing up there, we have converted all of our buildings are LED lighting. All of our heating and AC are relatively new heat pumps. So I think in those other aspects, we've made great strides. Our irrigation pump house system, which was a very old constant speed system, is now a variable speed system, and we're using almost half the electricity that we were before. So we've made great strides in a lot of other areas. That one's going to be, the golf carts is going to be our biggest one. So we will endeavor and get some information on that.
Thank you, and potentially maybe there was an opportunity to offset it with some solar from Beld as well on the rooftop. Just a thought. I don't know enough about engineering, but I think it's important to explore all those aspects, and I know you are, and thank you for those continued efforts. Sure. Okay, my last question on the goats. We already talked about deer birth control, so moving on to other livestock. Is there any possibility, and I guess this is just an open-ended question, to utilize the goats at Palm Meadow for some of the invasive species remediation over there? Or are they not transportable?
There are companies you can bring in. I can tell you that I tried to put a couple of ours into a trailer one time or bring them over to a touch and truck, and I almost got a hoof to the head. They weren't real happy about being transported around. We move them with a pail of sweet grain and a little shake, and they'll shake anywhere. It is certainly something we could look into. I would just be concerned. We were able to closely monitor them, the golf course,
Okay.
and it's something that
Yeah.
I would get nervous about. When he did try to have me get up to high school at one point, and that was a challenge, and they never.
Well, I don't expect you to be the Pied Piper goats and traipsing them all over town, but I was curious, and thank you for answering the question.
We wish they ate invasives, but they do not.
Oh, okay, well,
So
that
that's-
answers that.
Yeah.
I guess last question, is there any like the restaurant is, I know we had a while ago increased the food budget, I believe, for the restaurant there. Is that self-sustaining? Is it sufficient? Does that need to be?
We have, is there a revolving fund authorization tonight?
Yeah.
We are seeking an authorization to raise that.
Okay.
With our projection and our trajectory of food and beverage has been steady and increasing. It's been really great. People have been impressed with the quality of the food and the variety of the menu. Our tournaments certainly take advantage of it. Most of them have been staying at the golf course and eating. So that has been positive. We have a food and beverage manager that's been with us just about a year, and he has made some great changes to it. We've been able to upgrade some equipment in the kitchen that's been long overdue. We have finished recarpeting the clubhouse, and we've done some audio-visual upgrades as well. So not only has the food and beverage revolving fund been self-sustaining, it's also been, as we had hoped when we started in 2018, it has been reinvesting back into the facility.
That's great news. And the restaurant is open for residents to walk in and use it and to
Absolutely.
eat there, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. Highly recommend the deck. I'm not a golfer, but it's a nice place to sit and eat. Okay, so is that the $700,000 I see here, Director Esmond?
Correct.
Okay. And then there's the Pro Shop Fund for $300,000. So I guess, are there any other questions on the revolving accounts for either the Pro Shop or the food and beverage for golf? No? Okay. Any other questions for golf? Thank you so much for being with us this evening. We really appreciate it, and I hope we're off to a great season.
Great. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, bringing to our final budget item this evening is our finance department, and I do want to say thank you to Catherine Pomeroy from CLA, who is joining us and assisting, not just with this, but with the finance department definitely, and with all of our hearings. So thank you so much. And I know we also have our town treasurer, Christina O'Connell, and our town grant writer, Lorraine C. here as well. And thank you both for joining us this evening. Yeah, we just have to share the microphones. Okay, Director Esmond, would you like to start us off?
I will start, thank you.
Okay.
And, I'll try to keep my comments brief. I kind of gave you a placemat presentation to maybe just summarize a few things, but thank you for also acknowledging Christina and Lorraine's participation. They're a couple of the very hardworking, dedicated professionals in the finance department. You know, I very much appreciate their help and assistance they provide to me and to the mayor and to all of town government every day. So I think folks on the committee know, but just as a way of recapping it, it may come as a surprise to some folks in the public that the finance department's budget is actually, on its face, pretty substantial. So next year, we're proposing a budget of $16.3 million across all finance department programs. That's because primarily the town's debt service appropriations are within the finance department, and then also another key driver, another large budget buster is the insurance budget, which also falls into the finance department. Beyond the traditional finance functions, so that would be your accounting, financial reporting, treasury, assessing responsibilities. You also have the IT budget for the entire town, absent of the school district, also appropriated within finance. So that's also an important part of it. I think it's critical to note the town, for the residents to know that the town of Braintree has sort of a unique relationship, and we leverage that with BELD. We have not a single IT staff person on payroll within the town. All of our IT function is essentially performed by BELD through a maintenance of effort agreement that was adopted many years ago and has been maintained. We fund it, and I can answer any questions folks have about it. I meet once a month with the IT director and his team, or if on matters. So we work very closely with BELD, but it's a unique relationship. It has its advantages, certainly, in that we're not at the risk of duplicating essentially efforts, and the town's able to avoid a lot of the regular annual maintenance and investment that's required to run a full, secure, end-to-end IT responsibility. There's probably some strategic outcomes that need to be discussed as part of that, but that is an important thing to note, and I mention it here really kind of just to shed a little light on the finance department budget and what's actually funded within it. I won't go through the other main programs, but really the bulk of the people, the professionals in the finance department are funded in the administration, accounting, assessing, and treasurer collectors programs. Next year, right now, we're projecting a head count of 16 professionals. That's down from 18 in fiscal '25. I will discuss that a little bit further in a second. And while those don't make up the biggest dollars, obviously compared to debt service, insurance, maybe even IT, that's really where the lion's share of the bulk of the work day in and day out is performed in those divisions and in those programs. And while I think there's a lot of areas for us to continue to put our efforts on, I also want to say I think I can speak for Christina, Mark, Paul, the division heads that oversee these staff, and I certainly would say the same thing about Lorraine. This is a dedicated team. full of a lot of unsung heroes who we ask to, and share a customer service discipline every day, and I'm really proud of that effort. So just turning quickly to a few highlights in the Finance Department's budget for fiscal -- and this is structured not to focus on everything, which of course I'll be happy to have us answer, but just some big things to note with respect to the budget and key drivers of variance. You'll see in the Finance Administration, the year-over-year change is about $710,000. So there's a salary reserve that we noted in a previous meeting, and the mayor touched on the 2% assumption for essentially the cost of collective bargaining agreements that are currently beginning negotiation. That's funded fully in a separate salary reserve account under the Finance Department. It would be part of the program appropriation. None of that funding would be dispersed until actual agreements are ratified by the membership of each unit, and then brought before town council for funding and acceptance. And then and only then would the funds actually be dispersed to back out to town departments. The 711 that I referenced is only for town government side. Within the school appropriation is a separate salary reserve, but again, the same rule applies. None of that funding would be dispersed until an agreement was reached. And again, that would be brought back to town council for ultimate approval. One of the critical things to note in the fiscal '26 budget is it contemplates a reorganizational change. I think it's something that's long overdue. I'd articulate. A lot of the job descriptions of the professionals in our departments have not been updated in some cases, so I'm going to guess maybe 15 or 20 years even. And we are currently in the process of discussing, hopefully concluding discussions with the unit that represents the largest share of our employees to modify the job descriptions and responsibilities of a number of folks across the different divisions, essentially to allow us to account for the fact that we are down 2 positions, so that we could essentially job share across some of our divisions right now, and really account for the fact that there are times when the flow, the demand of the residents, of customers, of businesses are not the same across those divisions, and we can more flexibly address that. Right now, we're a very siloed function, the Finance Department, and what we're looking to do is break down those silos to some degree. We will not be a fully flexible staff where we break down the walls entirely, but this allows us to look at responsibilities, as I said, and modify them in a way that helps us, again, bring resources to the most acute need over the course of a 12-month calendar. We haven't implemented this yet. We, like I said, are still in the process of negotiating it. We contemplate the funding requirement to do that because it's part of the job description rewriting. We would need to adjust, reclassify those unit members because we would be adding additional responsibilities to the folks. But we are, and I really want to acknowledge Christina's hard work in this, we are looking to looking at, again, addressing, really updating the responsibilities of a finance department that really hasn't had them formally adjusted in many years. And a lot has changed in the world of finance and accounting. It may be perhaps one of the more drier subjects you'll have, but it is true. And software, digital government, all those things bring us, opportunities for us to look at this. So what you'll see here in these budget numbers is the funding that's required to execute that. Over the long run, we expect on an annual basis the changes would save the town funding while also, again, modernizing those responsibilities and most importantly, hopefully delivering better experiences for our customers, while hopefully actually expanding the ability to have people flexibly address, different resident needs, and hopefully address lines and things like that as best we can to meet the demand, again, the seasonal demand that we have. Because each of these divisions have peak kind of points where you might have lines out the door, and then you've also got simultaneously you might have a department that has, or a division that might not have any line because of just when the deadlines and things are due. We're not going to solve it all, but we're going to continue to work to make changes and measure our progress against the goal of, again, being able to flexibly target our resources that we have. So it's a key change. It wasn't articulated in our goals this year. It sort of arrived to us when we've had a couple vacancies, and where you were able to try to think a little bit more creatively about how we can organize our work. Just a couple other changes to note. IT, we are looking at some increases, ordinary increases, but not immaterial in the greatest scheme of things. In Beld, our MOA, I noted Microsoft 365 and our Munis licenses. We also fund in the IT budget our annual website hosting and maintenance service agreements. So all of those saw modest increases, and you can see the technology budget went up by 4.4. That's probably on the low end of an annual growth in IT, but that's really also just purely funding the existing level of service. We haven't really expanded anything, as far as software, and I think that's an area that we need to continue to look at as we try to bring more digital options for our residents who I think are really looking for that type of service, in the years ahead. We also see, just as a note, year over year, there's this, meaningful savings in the assessor's department's spending budget, because of there was the contract we had when we went to the valuation contract for personal property in addition to real estate valuation was front-loaded essentially in its cost over the 3 years, as a lot of work was required last year and will not be necessary to fund again in year 2 and 3 of the agreement. I just want to turn really quickly to debt service, turning to the most fun discussions. You can see here in the graphic of sort of the projection of debt service over a 5-year period. There will be further discussion of this when we file the 25 CIP, as far as implementing a new articulated policy as far as our debt service. But we've alluded to it, I think, in the mayor's budget filings, that we'll be looking to establish a policy range of roughly 6 to 7% as far as annual debt service as a percentage of total operating revenues, which will then allow us to essentially set the annual capital expenditures for the year ahead as well as for an out year period of time, allowing us to hopefully better understand the resources available to the town and its capital spending, and then be able to identify projects over several years that we can actually move forward with and not be really focused on 1 year at a time. It's also just a useful tool because we know debt service is a real important, it's a critical part of our, our annual budget. It's a fixed cost from a lot of considerations. Many of if you were to extend the debt service schedule, it goes out, existing debt service goes out to 2046 for all debt service that the town has, all long-term borrowing that we have before we fully expire it. So it's important that we manage it, track it closely, and look for ways to borrow in the most cost-effective, manageable way possible, not just for the general fund supported bonding, but also across our enterprise funds as well. We've touched on it. The Whiteshell agreement that was reached last fall is a critical part of this debt service budget. As we said, about $786,000 in the operating budget this year is tied to the cost of that agreement. Primarily, the bulk of that is primarily in our long-term bonds. The net cost to the town was 11.9 million. So we had already recovered a net $3 million of proceeds to offset the 14.9. So you get to 11.9. The town issued long-term bonds after we reached approval from the state that we could borrow for up to 15 years, which we needed approval to borrow more than 1 year. We did get approval from the state to borrow up to 15 years. We issued $6 million, or roughly half of that net amount outstanding in long-term bonds. The basis of the $6 million was that's what we felt was the best current moment approximation of what we felt certain the town would have to borrow for. The remaining 5.9 is something that we're tracking closely against what our long-term prospects are of recovering additional net insurance recovery, insurance claim recoveries against. And the ability to actually do that will affect that what we ultimately may have to go further out and borrow further for of that 5.9. So I know when I think I presented a couple weeks ago, we thought I was asked, I think, or we said I would come back to this, so I wanted to make sure I re-emphasize those points. It's difficult to know of the 5.9. There's roughly about 500,000 that we so far recovered. And it will take time before we know how much we'll actually be able to recover. The firm that we have brought in to help has been actively leading this and has been advocating very strongly for us at every level that they represent us for. But the one thing they certainly they've been very clear is that it's going to take time for us to know how long ultimately we have to, how much we ultimately will be able to recover and reduce how much the town additionally would need to borrow. So we will continue to update the committee, the town council, on that progress, and hopefully we'll do as best we can as we move forward on that. Lastly, on insurance, just in general, I think it's probably just important to note the town procures most of its insurance working with Maya, who really is responsible essentially serving as a broker to secure us either through their own provided or through arranged third-party coverage for our general liability, casualty, property, and auto lines. But they also coordinate our school committee management, the town's management lines, as well as give us advice and guidance on our police and fire and law enforcement liability lines. So we continue to see the kind of the waning but still real impacts of a hard market that really probably peaked coming out of COVID. And guidance remains elevated as far as what costs the town should see. I think a lot of this is driven by claims experience, where a property claim, an auto claim, for example, are the actual replacement cost when a repair is performed, when it's paid out by the carrier. The costs just continue to have upward pressure, and that residual effect remains flowing through in the pricing we get. Unfortunately, the estimates, the budget that's here is an estimate. We often don't get full pricing until closer to the end of the fiscal year, which can be affected by things as benign as like prompt payment, which we always try to take advantage of, as well as bonus points and other coverage credits we get. But it remains the case that insurance is a challenge. I wish to note that it wouldn't be, but it remains another budget area from year in and year out that we need to watch closely over the course of the year. So those are probably my remarks. Sorry if it was a bit long, but I think just to wrap up, we're happy to be in front of the committee today and answer any questions. I think there's a few things that were open that we would carry over from earlier today and also other nights, so we'll be happy to answer those, I guess, as they come up.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Director Esmond. And I know we do have the Braintree Day to review, but I'll turn it over to the committee members for questions. Councilor Maglio?
Sure, thank you.
Go right ahead.
I would love to hear, since you are here as our grant writer, Lorraine, I would love to hear a little bit of an overview about how you go about planning, cultivating, stewarding, like that grant process.
I think it's important to note that I can't work in a silo. Grant writing is something that is a collaboration between me and all of the departments. I do weekly reviews of the grant opportunities that are out there, and I send them to the departments. It's ultimately up to the departments to make the decisions whether it's appropriate to apply.
Okay.
Can I also just add something? And I should have noted this in my opening remarks. Lorraine's actual title and her role is actually the contract administrator. And contract, I'm always going to say it wrong, but it's important for folks to know that Lorraine wears two very different hats. And I should have noted it because it's important on the outset. Contract administration is very uniquely different than grant administration. And our department, in both cases, I think, is contemplating being a coordinating role. But the reality is this. The responsibilities of contract administration is very complicated, and I would say from a risk basis, critical that we perform it right. If we get something wrong, a procurement can be completely, sabotaged, for lack of a better way to say, completely run off the road. You could have a bid protest or something like that. You also, there's just a lot of rules and important things that towns are required as a public entity to follow. So I think, I just want to contextualize that. I think it's important to note because often when I talk about my organization, I too often glance over that. It's not to say that the grant responsibilities of our department aren't given priority when we can, or not given importance, I should say. But the grant responsibilities of our department really fall under, I would say, a coordination role with a lot of hard work from Lorraine to try to quarterback that. But it's a delegated model. It's something I think I've had a couple conversations with Councilor Maglio, and I think we're open to, open to ongoing conversations, feedback, and creative solutions. But I didn't stress it in the beginning, and I think I should have, that the contract administration and procurement responsibilities of our department are really important. And in this role, I think often, and I think it's reasonable, they're paramount to our grant responsibilities. I can't say that the long-term impact of that is nothing. I wouldn't. But I think it's the right decision when we have to make it, because we only have really one person who kind of has to quarterback a lot of this in our government.
And I think that's the point. And that's why I keep bringing it up, is that we have one sole person who has this as part of her title, as a secondary title, an additional role, with primary responsibility for the contracts piece, which is huge. So what I think, and what I keep raising, is the fact that I think we need more capacity and more investment in this, not because there's some sort of lack of what's happening. What you have is a huge task. And what I ask for or have been curious about is, what is the process for keeping track of this? And we just kind of keep going in a circle, and there is a lot of money out there. There's a lot of discretion as to whether we are going to pursue a grant or not. Certainly, I completely understand that it's not up to Lorraine to decide which department's going to go for which grant. Totally get it, and just you're sort of kind of saying, hey, here are these opportunities, and here you go. But there should be a strategy. It should not be up to individual departments. It should be consistent with the vision of the mayor. There should be specific objectives that we are looking to find funding for. There are different levels of pipelines and partnerships and revenue out there that we sometimes need to go back to over and over again. And there should be somebody centralized who's taking care of that. Otherwise, we don't really have a system for that. And to put it on the shoulders of one person who's playing a facilitating role, a coordinating role, a backup, helping with, I imagine you probably help with boilerplate stuff, you probably help with some of the, maybe tweaking some of the budgets. So there's so many different things that you probably have expertise in that problems are relying on you for. But it just doesn't seem like there's a system, and it's not a criticism, it's a suggestion that we need to have a system. Somebody needs to be looking at this, because if nobody's charged with this role, then it's just something that maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. And it's not anybody's fault, it's just an opportunity where systemization, structure, looking for funds for specific things we want to achieve, so that we free up general operating so that these new sources of revenue can cover some of these things, is really something I feel I know a lot about, and I feel very strongly that it happens. And so I don't want to saddle somebody with these additional duties, but it would seem like somebody needs to have them somewhere, because it's the complex nature and the deadlines of the contract management is the same thing with multi-year grants. It's the exact same thing. It's just a different entity that you're reporting to. So that is my pitch for that.
Okay, I thank you, Councilor. I appreciate that, and I do think we, kind of internally had a few thoughts. I think, and I think one of the fundamental issues we need to assess is, what are the right opportunities, as you say, what's the strategic sort of approach? If you ask most departments, I think one of the things that they will articulate is that for them, grant funding often is additional, essentially layering of responsibility. And maybe too often we think of it as an opportunity to defray some of our operating costs, which I think, the funding entity is really not looking for you to do that, right? They're not looking for this to be a budget solution. They're funding this as an outcome-based focused approach. So we have to figure out, I think one of the biggest challenges we have is that if grants are continually seen as essentially more work in a very tax management perspective, it's hard to build that strategic perspective, I think, that you're alluding to. But it's, I think we track it in the sense we do, as Lorraine articulated, we try to make the information available to the departments, and then we have the capability sort of passively through our, sort of our accounting and financial reporting information on how, on the grants we have. But I recognize it's not at the level I think you're articulating, and I think it's something I think we need to, kind of take back, internalize, and think about a process, particularly something that we can transparently share with Ways and Means and Town Council. I certainly don't think anybody's giving up, but I think it's probably one that we want to, be very sort of transparent about the resources and who would be doing what. I know in having a couple sort of discussions in my time here with other town managers, other department managers, I should say, there is a feeling like it would just, we looked at it, we didn't see how it wouldn't just become essentially a zero, almost like a zero sum. Or worse, is that from a management resource perspective, it's additional things we have to organize and make sure that the same people are able to get this done, and that done, and something else gets pushed out. And that's, I'm not saying that we can't overcome that. I just think
But it's already happening. That's all that I'm reacting to, is that every single department has mentioned that they couldn't get everything done that they need to get done if it wasn't for them writing grants. So are they spending time writing $1,000 grants, $5,000 grants, $300,000 multi-year grants, $1 million grants? We have no idea. I have no idea. Are they spending half their week, a day, a year? Or are they constantly running over to town hall to get this paperwork, and they need to submit 6 copies, and it's got to be done online, and they don't have the scanner, and they don't have the new budget? I mean, it's a lot of work. And so maybe, and really all I've ever asked for is just like, what is the tool used to keep track of it? Yeah. And I can't get one. And I think that is and it's almost like it's not because there's some sort of a deficit or like that. I think there's some sort of information that we're going to learn. It's that there's information, and we're going to find out. And is there, how many grants are coming in, or how much grant revenue is coming in? And is that because there's 95 different grants that are constantly coming and going, or there are 7? Like, these are just metrics that we could look at to figure out how much time is being invested in this. And frankly, a $5,000 grant can sometimes be a heck of a lot more work than a $100,000 grant. Yeah. And so we can't go chasing, certainly not Lorraine or any program head can't run around chasing every $1,000 for a party and $2,000 for, to pay for the T-shirts for something. That's just way too time consuming, which is another opportunity to measure it and evaluate, is that even worth it?
Right, yeah.
So I thank you for all of your work and for managing all of those contracts and for making sure that we don't miss out any or that we don't miss the deadlines. So thank you. Lorraine.
Thank you, Counselor, did you have more? I'm sorry.
I am done, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Other questions for the finance team? Counselor Moran.
Thank you. I want to focus on a couple of issues. I want to go back to the administrative clerical increase in the treasurer collector's office. Proposed budget is $525,849 for administrative clerical this year. The FY25 budget was $395,835. How many positions are being reclassified or created under this number?
So, Counselor, I apologize. I didn't note it when I gave out the handout, but I think one thing to note is that the treasurer collector's line does not reflect the SUP that was adopted in the SUP 3. So the 395 that number should be corrected. As a projected number for fiscal 25, if you recall, we did file a supplemental budget in the treasurer collector's office because there was actually the budget for 25, the adopted funding level was too low.
But my understanding at that time that it was low, part of the reason why, well, I don't know if it was the department head or this one, but there was funding of the former treasurer collector as a consultant for a transitional period.
Yeah.
And so I anticipated that this would be lower.
So there's two issues that were going on. One was that we were still funding the previous treasurer collector to some extent in fiscal '25. But also was that the treasurer collector's budget in fiscal '25 did not have one of the FTEs that it should have had. We didn't catch it when we filed it. It was an FTE, I think roughly about, let's say, $50,000 worth of cost. So that was part of it.
Was this FTE in another budget or previously? Or
No.
so when was it created? I mean, if you look back to FY24, this line was at 445, 175. So I guess you dropped it at that point when you went to FY25.
Correct.
Okay. But still, even if we're looking at going from
Yep.
445, you're still going from 445 to 525.
Yeah. So the other position the net new position in this budget is actually, in fact, not a new position from a while ago, but it's relatively new for this discussion. We funded in the fiscal '25 budget a fourth FTE in the HR department that essentially was not filled, but we anticipated filling it. We ultimately elected to fill it in the treasurer collector's office to support, the title is a payroll supervisor. That position had been, I think, migrated at one point up to the HR department. We funded that position back in the treasurer collector's office, where that position is right now. It's one of the 18 that I noted. Was
the position on the org chart but vacant previously, or was the function being performed in HR?
It was being performed in HR. It had been vacant in lieu of the person who was doing it had been out for an extended period of time.
Okay, so I can buy that's level services. I have a same question for administrative, clerical, and accounting. It's going up 10%.
So there's no new positions for that. That reflects the reorganization that I noted earlier. There's three essentially positions that would be affected by that. What we're proposing as part of this is that those positions, as part of the ongoing discussions, hopefully again culminating shortly, would be that we would be able to reclass those positions and add additional responsibilities for those positions.
Okay. I'm a little bit concerned because there is reclassification going on in some departments for level services and not in others. And I know that I didn't anticipate that, so I wasn't as concerned about the council budget not incorporating a reclassification for the clerk of the council. But now that I'm seeing it prevalent in this budget, the mayor's budget, and other budgets, I think it is, in the least part, equitable and very appropriate that the clerk of the council be reclassified as well, commensurate with the reclassifications that are being considered in other departments. And I don't know how we facilitated. I know we talked about it informally, but I think that I would hope that incorporated in the mayor's budget motion would be an adjustment that would allow for the clerk of the council to be reclassified. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Moran. I will echo those sentiments. I think I 100% support making sure people are getting paid what they deserve. And there's one person on the payroll of the town that is not happening for, and it's the clerk of the council. And to have a look at how people are classified and to have an extremely junior member of the mayor's staff be making more than the clerk of the council, who is a seasoned professional and frankly irreplaceable, is, it's not right. And I will leave it at that. Councilor Flaherty, did you have any questions, comments?
I think that I don't have a lot to add to what Counselor Moran and Counselor Verica have had to say about our clerk of the council and the need to reclassify that salary. But I will underscore it with emphasis. I think that it is in the interest of equity. If we're doing reclassifications in other departments, we should also be doing that for this branch of the government. That's all.
Okay. Counselor Magley, go right ahead. Thank you.
Just like to go on record with agreeing with that sentiment very strongly in support of that.
Thank you. All right, so you have heard from all of us on that point. Bear with me one second. I do have a follow-up question on the salary reserve, Director Esmond. I understand the $711,000 is only the town side. Is the teachers and school personnel's salaries reserve also in the finance administration line? I know the school committee takes care of that, but where in the school committee's budget is that then?
So
Do
that
you
would
know?
be, if you have opened the line item detail report, so on page, sorry, bear with me.
That's okay, take your time.
I want to say, I'm sorry, it's probably towards the end, not in the middle. So on page 26 of 27, there is a transfer to school salary reserve, second line
Okay.
item from the bottom. And just to clarify again, that typically, the school operating funding will be dispersed on the first day of the month of the fiscal year. We will not disperse this 1.35. We need to reach agreement. Then we need town council's approval. So that will come before Ways and Means and then town council.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out and explaining it. That is very helpful. I appreciate it. Counselor Maglio?
I have a question about procedure for this budget based on what we just talked about. So we submitted our budget to the mayor. The mayor didn't decide whether or not we were going to reclassify. We decided whether we were going to reclassify, right? And we just didn't.
I think we decided we were not reclassifying, given the guidance that we were given.
Right. So,
And inherent in that was the inference that, or the presumption, that there wouldn't be the reclassification activity that is in this budget.
so could we offer an amended budget of ours, or has that window passed?
We can't offer an amended version of ours. What we can ask is for the mayor to consider amending the overall budget motion to incorporate a reclassification into this department. So we would probably, and I think we have conveyed our sentiment this evening fairly, clearly, that we want to see that in the budget. It is at the mayor's discretion whether or not she adopts it. I think we could pass the budget motions that we have before us tonight. And then if the mayor agrees to make the small modification to include the reclassification for the clerk of the council, we would have to meet prior to the overall vote on the budget at the town meeting, quote unquote, where the budget is voted. Move to amend it if the mayor offers an amendment, pass that amendment, and then we could read the motions in full at council.
And if that doesn't happen, is there a potential for, just procedurally, for a supplemental for us to,
Not on our own initiative.
it would have to come
Yeah.
from her? Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselors Maglio and Moran, for that. If the committee's amenable, I do want to make sure we go back to Braintree Day.
Yeah.
We have that outstanding question. I know we talked about when municipal licensing and inspections were here, the amount both in revenue and comp time essentially that has been granted employees who work that day. But Director Esmond, can you provide a more fulsome explanation to round out the answers for Councilor Maglio's questions? And thank you, Councilor Maglio, for sending those in.
So I will, I'm going to answer this primarily based on our fiscal '24 experience and what the plan is for fiscal '25, which is essentially the same. I do want to recognize, Madam Chair, that in Councilor Maglio, there are, I think, historical things that have happened over time with the committee. When I say the committee, I mean the Braintree Day Committee. So last year, we spent, and I will respond in writing.
Thank you.
With this. But last year we spent, if you follow the line items, just about $43,000 across the two line items that are traditionally associated in the rec department for Braintree Day. The overwhelming amount of that spending is related to overtime. And that's overtime expenses primarily for the police department, as well as the staff across probably a lot of different divisions within the Department of Public Works. So just highest level, that is for setup and then breakdown, so on the front end and the back end of the event, as well as the event staffing, in essentially security performed by the police department. That is the sort of the key drivers. So essentially, where the overtime is paid from those departments' budgets, we then essentially move the cost to those line items. So last year we spent again $43,000. This year we have a budget of $50. It's probably too early for me to say we'll spend the full $50, or if it was more. If it was more, then we would probably ask the departments, hey, we would go back and look to have them absorb it. And I think that's been done in the past. But this right now, $50,000 is essentially the analogous equivalent in fiscal '25 to what was in fiscal '24. What we're not spending anything on is we don't, I confirmed this with the departments. We're not, as my understanding had been, we're not spending money on any of the event production as far as hiring vendors, paying vendors. That's really left to the fundraising of the committee itself. That again, I think historically there may have been, more that the town might have done in the past, but this is the current state and plan. It's obviously a substantial marshaling of resources over really kind of a 3-day period, culminating obviously in the big event day, but on the days that kind of are between it. And typically some of that is also late on Friday and into the weekend for staff that might be scheduled on a Monday through Friday schedule. So it would be difficult for me to say what the departments could do to limit the overtime. I think it's, this is sort of what we see as a cost. It was something that, up to put on the event, I think it was something that the committee had worked to make sure that there was no other costs that the town was picking up. But that's really my answer. And again, I'll make sure to provide a written answer through Sue as well as that.
Did you have any follow-up, Counselor?
I think that I did some research on that, and I think the committee does a great job of, first of all, Braintree Day is a blast. But I also think that the committee does a great job in doing their own fundraising. They are their own nonprofit. They raise about $130,000, $140,000 a year. And so I don't think it's that we want our employees to do less overtime. I think it's as they continue to fundraise, that more expenses shift to the committee rather than the town.
Yeah.
That is my...
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Maglio, and I think that's timely, given the discussion we just had, that, we have some incredibly valuable employees who are incredibly underpaid. And we really need to think and look hard at what we're expending money on. Braintree Day is a blast, and we all love it. But we need to think about overall what keeps the town running day in and day out, and that's our people. And we need to make sure that those people are valued and paid what they're worth. And so, you know, we just need to look at all those items. Okay. And thank you for that follow-up, Director. Any other questions for the Finance Department? Catherine, do you have anything? Okay. All right. My last item here this evening is 01625, which is from the chair, FY 2026 budget discussions or revisions. I know we have had some discussions just now about that. Is there anything else that the committee members have any items of concern that they would like to discuss on the budget? If not, we can move towards reading the motions. But before we do that, I want to make sure I put out that call. Okay, seeing none. Councillor Moran, can you move to the motions, please? Clerk Semino.
Council Moran, I'm just trying to get this correct. So 25018 is your intent to table number 1?
No, what I'm proposing that the council do, I think we've made our request to the mayor known that we would like to see the mayor reclassify the position of clerk of the council. I'm not going to table this now. I'm going to pass it with the hope that the mayor will consider the Ways and Means Committee's request, make an adjustment to the budget that would incorporate the reclassification. We could come back before the full council meeting for a Ways and Means hearing to consider that amendment, make the amendment, and vote it as amended at the council meeting.
Okay, just want to understand
As long as the clerk of
procedurally.
the council agrees with the procedure that I'm proposing.
I guess I'm just a little concerned about, should we then, there's no tabling necessary, you can bring that
I don't
motion
think-
back
Or
without
can
having it
we table
reaffirmed?
one and bring it back?
You can do it either way.
Okay, as long as you're okay with that, I'm fine,
Yeah, you can do it either way. I mean,
because it's the amendment being proposed. So that's,
it's the chair's, however you want to do it. If you want to table it, we can table it.
I mean, if either which way, we need to come back
Yeah.
before the full council hearing on May 27th.
All right, then what I will do is move to table number 1.
Is there a second to table motion number 1 on the operating budget?
Second.
Councilor Magley, are you looking for your packet?
Are we talking about page 3?
This one.
no. So there's a yellow tab that has the motions?
Okay.
So we,
Page 1, 25018.
do you have your yellow sticky note there? Is that not it? We're awash in paper. Thank you for your patience, everybody. That's okay.
You're there, you're getting closer, I think.
Yep, almost there.
This one right here for
Yeah.
the motions to read.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so just to clarify, we have a motion to table motion number 1, which we will bring back on May 27th, and we have a second. Everybody clear on that? Okay, so all in favor to table motion number 1?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Counselor Moran?
I move that the town of Braintree appropriate the sum of $2,281,570 to provide for all of the expenses for the maintenance and operation of the town's golf course and related programs for fiscal year 2026, and that the several sums herein set forth are hereby approved for the several purposes as outlined on Exhibit A specifically, and that the sum of $2,281,570 be raised in the golf course receipts.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
I move that the town of Braintree appropriate the sum of $23,905,194 to provide for all the expenses for the maintenance and operation of the town's water and sewer division and related programs for the fiscal year 2026, and that the several sums herein set forth are hereby approved for the several purposes as outlined on Exhibit A, specifically that the sum of $146,000 be transferred from the Water Sewer Rehabilitation Fund and the balance of $23,759,194 be raised in the water and sewer receipts.
Second?
All in favor?
I'll try to do better on this one. That the town of Braintree appropriate the sum of $1,624,405 to provide for all the expenses for the maintenance and operation of the town's stormwater division and related programs for fiscal year 2026, and that several sums herein set forth are hereby approved for the several purposes as outlined on Exhibit A specifically, and that the sum of $1,624,405 be raised in the stormwater receipts.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. I would move that the town of Braintree appropriate the sum of $630,175 to provide for all of the expenses for the maintenance and operation of the town's cable, television, public education, and government access and related programs for fiscal year 2026, and that the several sums herein set forth are hereby approved for the several purposes as outlined on Exhibit A specifically, and that the sum of $630,175 be raised in the cable franchise fee receipts.
Second?
All in favor?
Move pursuant to General Law, Chapter 44, Section 31D, the town is authorized to incur a liability in excess of the amount appropriated for snow and ice for fiscal year 2026.
Second?
All in favor?
I move that the sum of $20,000 be transferred from the Stormwater Fund fiscal year 2024 certified free cash for a reserve for the purposes of funding drain maintenance during fiscal year 2026.
Second?
All in favor?
I move that the sum of $64,771 be transferred from the Stormwater Fund fiscal year 2024 certified free cash to the general fund for the purposes of funding Stormwater Fund debt service expenses during fiscal year 2026.
Second?
All in favor?
Move that a sum of up to $500,000 be transferred from the Human Resources Administration Payroll Restructuring Reserve Fund to the Fund 0003 School Operating Fund, provided that such transfer shall only be completed upon the written approval of the mayor.
Second?
All in favor?
Move that a sum of $600,000 be transferred from the sale of real estate fund 3502 to the general fund to reimburse the general fund for debt service for the East Middle School renovation.
Second?
All in favor?
I move that a sum of $600,000 be transferred from the general fund to the Special Education Stabilization Fund.
Second?
All in favor?
Is number 12.
Yep.
I had initially told Sue or asked Sue that it's motion 13 was the one that we would, because of Sean, it's actually 12 that I
Okay.
need to ask that the committee not do it. And I can give a very quick explanation. Sean had reached out to DOR because he had felt like this was one we couldn't do directly from fund to fund. He clarified that that was right. So
Okay.
in order to, we'll have to come back to the committee. The appropriateness, as far as the availability of the fund, I will argue is still there, but we'll probably have to take it back to general fund / free cash and reappropriate it from that. So I apologize. I said 13 to Sue, and it's number 12 that we need to hold.
No problem. Thank you for clarifying.
So we're going to skip 12.
We're going to skip
Yes.
motion 12. 13.
13, I move that a sum of $461,574 be transferred from Fund 4144 Catastrophic Protection to Fund 8344 Health Insurance Trust Fund.
Second?
All in favor? Okay, thank you very much, Counselor Moran. Do we need to do the community preservation, or we already did that?
We already did
Okay, we just did to do the revolving funds, okay. Thank you, Clerk Semino.
Okay, so,
Do we have a motion for fiscal year 2026 continuation of revolving funds?
Madam Chair, I would move that in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half of the general laws, the town of Braintree hereby sets the maximum amount that may be spent during fiscal year 26, beginning on July 1st, 2025, for the revolving funds established by ordinance for certain departments, boards, committees, agencies, or officers as follows. Elder Affairs Services Activities Fund 3002, Department of Elder Affairs, $30,000. Immunization Fund 3001, Board of Health, $50,000. Library Materials Fund 3006, Library Trustees, $45,000. Library Room Rental Fund 3007, Library Trustees, $5,000. Recycling Materials Fund 3004, Mayor in conjunction with Recycling Coordinator, $4,800. Household Hazardous Waste Fund 3005, Mayor in conjunction with Recycling Coordinator, $50,000. Full Day Kindergarten Fund 1008, School Committee, $1,100,000. Pro Shop Fund 7103, Mayor in conjunction with Golf, Director of Golf Operations, $300,000. Food and Beverage Fund 7104, Mayor in conjunction with Director of Golf Operations, $700,000. School Bus Fund 2011, School Committee, $500,000. Tree Replacement Fund 3013, Mayor in conjunction with Department of Public Works, $100,000. Building Maintenance Fund, TBD, Mayor in conjunction with Department of Public Works, $200,000.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous. I have actually one quick question, Director Esmond, on the Building Maintenance Fund. Does that need to come back to council when it has a number established? Or is this the establishment?
I don't believe so.
Okay, that's fine.
I can get clarification. We could strike it. I guess that
No,
wasn't
no,
the
no.
intent.
I just was a point of curiosity, so
Yeah.
thank you. Okay. Clerk Semino, do we have any other motions?
I apologize. No more motions. That building maintenance revolving fund is actually a public hearing on May 27th.
Thank you. Okay. That then concludes our FY 2026 budget hearings. I want to extend sincere thanks, Director Esmond, to you for all of the extra overtime and being here with us every night, always being thorough, always being transparent, and it shows how much you care about the town, the job, and all of the residents of Braintree. So thank you sincerely on behalf of the entire committee.
Your grace in all of my answers and listening to me.
And I also want to say thank you to BCAM for televising us for the last 8 nights while we went over the town budget. Bill Needham, Jerry Carmack, Dave Maybrook, thank you so much for bringing the committee hearings to our full community. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This hearing is adjourned. Thank you.